All right, good morning, guys. Sorry, I'm running a little late. Give me 1 second here. All right, let's quickly go over our trade plan here. It is pretty much the same as last night. We had a P-shaped profile. If you look at the overlapping profile, if you do not look at the overlapping profile, it is actually kind of still a P-shape, but it would be a P-shaped failure, where it was more like a D-shape, and now we're breaking into that lower tail. Now, I would personally look at this as an overlap, because we have so much overlapping value here. So we want to watch that overlapping P shape. So if we stay below that 90 level, we're kind of rotating back down to like 70, possibly 55. So holding below 70, look for that 44, look for that 27. Also, like I said, if you're watching that overlap, it's kind of right there on that POC around 56. Holding above 90, we'll look for 508 and 550. Those are the extension targets to the upside. But yeah, that's why the levels are not quite exact. It's because they are using that overlap. Keep an eye on that overlapping profile going back to Friday. Basically the same story on NASDAQ. The only difference is NASDAQ is not back into that prior overlap. So we've got a lot of that old value above that we could be retracing into. So basically from 750 to like 950 is a massive value range to retrace. So right into the open here, we are retracing yesterday's value. Keep an eye on that value high around 550. Holding below that, we're going to look for 467 and 337. Those are the value levels of Tuesday and the single print zone. Holding above 611, that is the overlapping value high. Looking for 673 and 744. So a bunch of overlapping value in this area, kind of back and forth. Basically, no data after the bell today. We do have NVIDIA earnings after the closing bell. So watch out for that. Long story short, we are in that P-shaped rotation, possibly pulling back into yesterday's value. So keep a close eye on the value high of yesterday, probably the most important level on the open here. Very far from our VWAPs. Let's look at some of our reversal points here. Keep an eye on VWAP coming up very quickly. 481 and 584 on NASDAQ. Pretty far on NASDAQ, but getting pretty close on ES. Not finding a lot of sell pressure on the low there. We do have a 15-minute pivot on the open. What about a 30? Also a 30, so brand new pivots coming in on the 15 and 30. Keep an eye on those. You do have 1-minute pivots down there as well, so very strong pivot right out of the open. They like that buy pressure around the 70s. Pivot at 73 and 533, basically low of day. Yeah, every single time frame has a pivot here. 5-minute, 1-minute, 15, 30. It is also on the 1-hour trail, so a lot of support here. It's also the value high of yesterday, and it's also the POC node of the overlap. So we have a lot of agreement. I was going to say agreements again. You guys are going to yell at me. A lot of agreement on that 70 area. Price really likes that area. You want a Marcel, AT, Tachi, Liquidated, Trevor, Backpack, and Jeremy. You want a Techie, Olive, Morris, Trent, Mark. You want a Larry, Tamer, Leo. You want a Future, Angelo, Michael, Greg, JF, Broccoli, Banana, Jose, Allen. You want a Bobby, Vivian, C-Mac, Creso, Peter, JC, Software, 2013. Eduardo, Blood, Igor, Axe, eBay, Ordinary, Argenis, Tarnation, Roman, Naboja. Good morning. Here's that trade plan for you guys. Keep an eye on VWAP here, still pivoting back into VWAP. Looking for 81. You don't have a 30-minute pivot on NASDAQ, and you do not have that trail protection on the 1 hour. So it is a little bit better on ES here, which is probably why we're back into VWAP already. So this was the prior overnight low before you had that breakdown. Trying to flip that level here. You had support. A little bit of a flip there. A little bit of a flip there. And now we are actually trying to flip it. We're trying to break through. Very one-directional price action right here in this general area, so it could be retraced quite easily. You can see on the 30-minute candle, this little sell-off right here, very weak. Very easy to retrace. NVIDIA straddles imply a 6.1% move with the earnings, so it should be pretty large. There's the VWAP. If you're trading any of those pivots, that's a pretty nice target there. Let me show you that pivot overlap here, really clean. We have that 30-minute pivot coming in, 15-minute pivot coming in, 5-minute pivot confirmed, 74, 1-minute pivot confirmed, 73. So you had a waterfall effect, right? The 1 minute comes in, the 5-minute comes in, 15, 30. We don't have a 1 hour pivot, but we do have that, that trail support. We actually have a top pivot here that's kind of pushing us down a little bit. A little bit of absorption into VWAP here. Buyers kind of getting stuck. Hey, Liquidated, good morning. He said yesterday's trade plan played out very well. Yeah, no problem, man. Well, I don't reveal all that, Tarnation. All I basically say is it's a pivot of momentum and volume. But I don't reveal any of this secret sauce. Basically, the easy answer is it's proprietary. It's not like a simple formula. It's not looking for like a lower low or a higher low or something like that. It's a pretty complex formula it's looking for. Seller holding NASDAQ down here. You can see ES pushing up into VWAP, seller being completely stalled, or sorry, NASDAQ being stalled by a seller here. So one thing I'm going to try to focus on commentating today, because I have been getting a lot of questions about this in my tutoring sessions, is like using the 1 minute as more so a market structure zigzag than a candlestick chart, right? So I'll try to commentate a lot on like what I'm seeing on the market structure on the low time frames here. I could probably turn on the zigzag again too. Yeah, so right now what we're seeing on the zigzag, the 1 minute structure, is we very obviously had lower low, lower high, lower high, lower low, lower low. And what I'm referring to is the overall, right? So like these are creating lower highs from this high here. So very clearly trending downward. That's pretty obvious. I think most people could figure that out. And then this move right here, this very strong engulfing candle, this is pivoting, right? You have all those pivots. They are trying to create a break in structure. Nasty sell pressure on NASDAQ here. Keep an eye on the value of yesterday possibly being retraced. Also turning into a bear flag into VWAP on ES. A lot of bearish delta coming in. A lot of absorption on that level as well. But yeah, so that massive impulse there, that engulfing candle, is trying to pivot. It's trying to break that structure to the upside, which for now it has taken out those local highs. So the local structure is shifting. We don't really have an obvious higher low yet. We would need this to come down a little bit and then pop up and put in that obvious higher low. Then we could start saying that it's trying to really shift that structure to the buy side. So right now you're in the phase of shifting from a downtrend into an uptrend, but it's not really confirmed just yet. Good morning, Faye. Good morning, Dark. The 5-minute makes this a bit more obvious. Like you can tell that you're starting to break these local highs, but you don't really have that higher low. This is one of those shifts that's kind of a V reversal. It doesn't really give you that kind of like a W, right? Like a W would have multiple lows, kind of putting in the higher lows, possibly inverse head and shoulders, that sort of thing. But a V reversal is just straight down, straight up. Doesn't really give you that confirmation on that market structure. Bear flag and the VWAP getting some resistance here on that 24 EMA. You do not like to see that after a failure of VWAP. Like I said, you want one smooth motion back down to that prior low. If you don't have that smooth motion, that trade is typically dead. Now, I would say this is a special case because that trade is definitely not dead, because look at NASDAQ. NASDAQ is nuking here, so NASDAQ could be leading this move, pushing ES back down, which it looks like it is, right? We have that bearish absorption, or sorry, bullish absorption. The bulls are being absorbed. The bulls are being absorbed, which can be seen as bearish. Good morning, Bella. Appreciate everybody being here. Keep an eye on those trails and the 24s. The 24 EMA being tested, trail being tested on the 1 minute as well. Keep an eye on that 30-minute pivot. We still have 13, 14 minutes or so to confirm that pivot. So if it nukes here before that 30-minute candle closes, you could turn that pivot off. Very different price action here on ES and NASDAQ. This is what I was talking about earlier with that seller holding you down. You had a seller here just holding NASDAQ down. The tapes are very 50-50 today. We're not seeing like very obvious clusters on one side. You can see both the tapes are just kind of back and forth. So this could be the higher low move that we were talking about. So you had this kind of V reversal, right? You start to break out, engulfing candle. That starts to threaten this downtrend here. We don't have a complete confirmation until we see that higher low. So this could be that higher low being established, but we'd like to see it have a couple of candles, at least a cluster. If it's only like one little wick that pulls back, it's still kind of a V reversal. And what I mean by V reversal is like one clean move, right? You don't really have those clusters in between. Those are a lot harder to trade. If you're trading a V reversal, you don't really have that confirmation. You have to watch the EMA flips. You have to watch the pivots at the bottom. Maybe if there's a bull dip at the bottom. Maybe if there was a purple shading. Maybe there was a sweep, right? All right, the zigzag's ugly. I'm going to turn it off. Still kind of being absorbed, and there you go, big bearish block trade. So buyers still being absorbed on VWAP here. So that VWAP trade is still alive. Buyers being absorbed on the bear flag into VWAP. NASDAQ leading to the downside. Keep an eye on that higher low. So we want one smooth motion from VWAP back down to that low. So if you do see that cluster coming in, and it puts in that higher low, that's kind of killing the VWAP trade, right? Because with a VWAP trade, you want there to basically be, let me go to the 1 minute here. You want this failure to kind of be the opposite of a V reversal, right? That A reversal. You want one smooth motion back down. If it starts to stall out, and it does something like this, and it puts in like a cluster, and then it goes back up, you don't want to see that. That kills the VWAP trade. You don't want to see sideways. You don't want to see a strong bounce. One smooth motion. So one thing about the bear flag and the VWAP trade is we typically talk about like pulling your stop losses down. And if you're trying to trail your stop loss, you want to see those clusters so you know you're safe to pull your stop, right? But because the bear flag and the VWAP, we want to see that one smooth move. We don't want to see those clusters get too strong. It makes pulling your stop a little bit difficult, right? So you have to kind of trail your stop based on like the trails, the EMAs, the candlestick highs, basically any other form of trail. You can't really use those clusters as your trailing method in a bear flag in the VWAP because you don't want to see those clusters, right? Like, for example, if you started this trade and you had your stop like up here, we don't really have a secondary cluster to bring this down to. So if we wanted to bring our stop down, you would basically be trailing VWAP or trailing the EMAs or trailing like the 5-minute highs, like whatever you want to trail. But you can't really use the cluster, unfortunately. Do I ever use auto trails? I wouldn't recommend using auto trails for the most part, because that's what's called trading your P&L. What I would say is if you're like you've closed like 75% of your trade, your runner is up to the point where there's pretty much no way you would lose. Even if it comes back like 5-10 points, you're still happy taking profit. At that point, you could just slap an auto trail on it and just forget about it, right? Just be like, okay, if it pulls back 5-10 points, I'll get out of it. So I think if you're using an auto trail, you're basically saying that at this point, you don't really care. You don't really care that it bounces. You're just ready to get out anyway. I wouldn't use them actively in every trade. Okay, so here is the problem. This is something you do not want to see on a bear flag in a VWAP. This is something you do want to see if you're looking for that market structure shift to the upside, because we are trying to put in that higher low. This is that higher low we talked about earlier. So if this buy candle here doesn't immediately start selling on VWAP, that trade is dead. So now you are turning into more of a pivot confirmation. The pivot's called the bottom. This is the retest of the pivots, putting in a higher low, shifting our market structure to the upside. Now, in volume profile terms, all we're doing is rotating, right? We're just rotating this value area, so nothing really changing here. Look for that 85 rotation. NASDAQ, really nasty candle. Today you're seeing, people have been asking me a lot recently, why do you trade ES over NASDAQ? And what is the benefit of ES over NASDAQ? Today you're seeing that benefit. These wicks are very nasty sometimes on NASDAQ. And they can catch a lot of traders off guard. So you're retesting that overlapping value low, bouncing off it pretty clean. That bounce is a little bit weird though, because you're not finishing the retrace of yesterday. So this would have been the retrace of yesterday, 553 down to 468, bouncing a little bit early. If that is the low of day, this is an incomplete auction. So it creates kind of like a single print zone that wants to be filled in. Okay, we are seeing that sell pressure on VWAP, so it's not entirely dead, but it does not look good. If you had a break-even stop or a stop in profit, you're already out of it. If you had a stop where you originally had your stop because you didn't really have anywhere to pull it down to, you're still okay. But this is definitely not a great variation of that bear flag in the VWAP. It's a bullish market structure shift variation. I can't really answer that for you, Chris. That's really a personal thing you're going to have to figure out for your strategy. I would say, like, a good rule of thumb is, like, how often do you want to, and reasonable, like, how often do you reasonably want to take withdrawals? Then you have to say, okay, if I want to take a withdrawal once a month, once every 2 months, how many of my average trading days do I need to hit that goal? You see what I'm saying? So you'd have to base it on like your consistency, how often, or the average on your, how much you make a day, how much you make a week, how much you make a month. Like, what is your average balance that you're pushing your account up to? Because that would be a comfortable place to take a withdrawal. It needs to be consistent enough to where like you're getting that satisfaction, that like dopamine of paying yourself. And this goes for any account, not just prop firm accounts. This goes for like any non-long-term account, like day trading accounts, options accounts, futures accounts that are your own money. You just need to find that like average balance that you can get to on, say, like once a month, that you can take a withdrawal and be like, okay, I'm actually doing something right here. You're like Pavloving yourself, right? It's what I always talk about with like futures accounts, even if you guys are not trading on prop firms. You don't want to just constantly build money up in that account. That's not how futures accounts work. You really don't need a lot of money in your personal futures account. You can trade a shit ton of contracts with a small amount of money. So that money should be going to other things, either your expenses or whatever, your lifestyle. Could be going back to another trading account, like a longer term account. But no point in leaving it in the account. But yeah, percentages don't work. Percentages don't work in futures. I personally don't think so. Notice I'm not commentating on any market structure shifts because there's none happening right now. The last shift that we had was this one right here, which is that higher low that we talked about. So this is confirming the larger shift in structure. We had a down structure into an up structure here. So now we have our higher low. Do we have our higher high? So now it has to break above 83, build a node, build a cluster, whatever you want to call it, build some candles. Doesn't matter what you look for. Need to build something above like 83 to 85. Inside days suck. Yeah, a lot of people don't like trading when the market looks like this, where we have the overlapping value. And unfortunately, not to sound like a broken record, I've been saying this for like 2 weeks now, but this is the price action you're gonna have to get used to because it's probably gonna be like this all month in September. We'll see. They love those price pins in September. Well, you got to be careful on your wording because If we build a node at 85, that doesn't mean we're starting an uptrend. That is confirming that this is an uptrend. Technically, the uptrend started down here. And this is kind of semantics, but it technically started down here, but we didn't know it was an uptrend until it was confirmed, right? So I wouldn't say it's starting the uptrend, I would say it's confirming it. I would say technically the pivots started the uptrend. That explosive candle on the open started the uptrend. We just didn't know it was an uptrend until we saw the confirmation on the higher low, higher high. But like I said, that's just kind of semantics. You know what I mean? Good morning, James. Good morning, Faraj. Not sure if I saw you earlier. Yeah, Chris, it's like I always say, it's like it doesn't matter how many accounts you fail on the eval. If you can finally get a payout and it pays for all those evals that you failed, then you're still net positive, right? But obviously there is a limit. There's a limit of you're not seeing progress, right? You always want to see progress. If you're stagnating and just consistently failing and you're not seeing any progress, then you don't want to just keep losing money, right? They're still protecting VWAP here. They're still absorbing a lot of buy pressure on this value high. This like 82 to 85. This is that value high of the current day. Yeah, Jake, these back heavy weeks, this is extremely common on the GDP PCE week because every time they come out, it's Thursday and Friday. And then typically Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday has nothing going on. So this is like, you could take a picture of this and save it for next time. This is pretty much exactly what happens every single time on GDP PCE weeks. You have these back heavy data weeks that all the major data comes out at the end of the week. And the market just pins itself. Yeah, going back to what you were saying, Chris, about like strategies, it's trading in general. You just want to try a bunch of different things, see what works, see what doesn't work. Don't get stuck into this like never-ending trap of just doing the same thing over and over and over again and failing the same way every time. Turning into kind of a vertical distribution here. So the uptrend is showing itself, but it's showing itself in a choppy way. Keep an eye on those 24 EMAs and trails to push you higher. That higher low has confirmed that we are shifting market structure here. Building a cluster above 82 to 85. Holding on to that cluster should get a lot of buy pressure, or could get a lot of buy pressure, I should say. No, I'm not super familiar with ICT stuff. I've never like learned it. I've never taken any courses or watched any videos or anything. I only know over the years all the stuff I've seen that people have posted on like it was very popular in crypto Twitter back in the day. So like crypto traders were using it quite a bit. like I've seen the charts, I've seen the explanations of why people like to trade the levels they do. But I haven't like gone in depth and like learned that system, so I can't really give you my thoughts on it. For the most part, almost every single thing I've seen from it is just a restructuring of volume profile teachings. Pretty much any modern system that's using like liquidity or value or anything like that, it's just reteaching volume profile. Yeah, Chris, a lot of people like to use them as like a testing ground, which I talk about that a lot on my stream, like using my accounts as a way to test strategies or systems for my main account. It's like a safer way to test instead of like just 100% real money. Here is the bear flag and the VWAP on NASDAQ. So this is where if NASDAQ is leading and NASDAQ starts to get a heavy sell here, you will pull ES down. So be careful here. Watch that VWAP. This is the first major retest of VWAP since the breakdown. Yeah, Chris, a lot of people do that where if you're coming up on your renewal on Apex, you can trade a lot more aggressively because if you fail the account, it will renew itself, right? But if you don't fail it, you're going to have to remain at that negative balance. Okay, so at this point, the trend has fully shown itself, right? We had the pivot at the bottom. That's where all the overlapping pivots were. We can go back and show you if you guys are just coming in. You had the 30-minute pivot, 74, 15-minute pivot, 74, 5-minute pivot, 74, 1-minute pivot, 73 and a quarter, so a little bit lower. So those pivots all lined up, perfect combo with the purple shading. Purple shading on the 5, no shading on the 15, but you do have a pinch, and you have a bull div on the 30. So pretty much everything lined up there for a bottom. You have a bull div on the 30, like I said. There's the pinch going up on the 15, purple shading pivot on the 5, and purple shading pivot on the 1. Okay, so we saw all that come in, right? Then we didn't know for sure if that was turning into an uptrend or it was just a pivot. Then we had a local higher high right here, so this high was taken out. Then we had the higher low. So this higher low killed the bear flag in a VWAP trade. If you took that trade, not a bad trade. It just didn't work this time, unfortunately. That higher low killed that trade, and now we are in a very obvious trend. So higher high locally, higher low locally, another higher high locally. So obviously the longer term, if we zoom out, we're not really in an uptrend just yet, but locally we definitely are. So now what we're watching for, there's that VWAP2, the tick, by the way, on NASDAQ. So obviously watching for that, like I said earlier. The other thing we're watching for on ES is because this uptrend has shown itself, we need to see kind of a one time framing effect where we continue to break new highs. We continue to protect those lows. If we do not see that, the momentum starts to shift. If they start failing to break the highs, gets a little choppy, starts breaking the lows, starts shifting to the downside, right? So right now, none of those things are happening. Right now, we are still in an uptrend. The highs are still being taken out. The lows are still being protected. So none of those things are showing themselves just yet. We've also reclaimed the absorption. Very good reclaim there. Here is the value high of today and the overlapping value high. So if this short-term trend is going to waterfall into a higher time frame trend here, you're going to need a significant break of this 87 to 90 level. So if this short-term trend is coming to an end, it's going to come to an end in the next like 5 minutes, or 5 points, excuse me. Basically below 90. No, the indicators are not free. They're a part of the Discord. They're part of the website. You can get them from our Apex partnerships. If you guys sign up for Apex using our code, you can get them through there for free as well. But they are not directly free, no. Morning, Lucio. Yeah, Bobby, that's one way to look at it is, so pretty much every time you are bear flagging into VWAP, you're going to be above that ADMA because price is rising. If it's aggressively above the ADMA where it's like not even allowing price to go below it whatsoever, that trade is weaker for sure. But if it's testing like the 24, so here's a good example actually. So look at ES here. So you see how ES is hitting the 24 EMA and kind of chopping around VWAP? That gave you a decent push down. But if you look at NASDAQ here, you see how it's holding above that ADMA pretty much the entire time. You wicked it like one time and then bounced above it. That makes that trade a lot weaker. You got to be careful with that though, because like I said, every time you are going back into VWAP, the price is rising, so it will be above the ADMA. So by itself, it does not make it like a terrible trade. It just depends on how it's respecting the ADMA. Like there are trends, kind of like the trend we're turning into here, where they just do not allow it to get below that aggressive average at all. They hold it above that average every single candle. Basically one time framing. You got to be careful with that. We talk about that in the bear flag videos, I believe, the shorts. I talk about how the slower bear flags, the choppier bear flags into VWAP are typically better. If it's an aggressive like V-shaped reversal into VWAP, then you got to be careful. It's like chess, man. Trading is very, very similar to chess. There's just a million different variations, and you kind of have to learn the different variations of your trades. It's like learning chess openings. Trading is like a combination of chess and poker, basically. You have like the risk management and probabilistic style from poker. And then you have like the variations in the opening style of chess. Planning moves ahead like chess, right? Still not seeing any market structure shifts here, so we are maintaining that trend. One thing to look for is any sweeps, any bear divs, any lower highs, that sort of thing. Like I said, if it's not going to waterfall into the higher time frames, it will stall most likely around 90, because 90 is the multi-day resistance. We're above all the major value of last week as well. If we can hold above 90, it starts to fall off pretty quickly above that. I mean, look at all this overlapping value. There's so much overlap from 60 to 80. And this could have been the retest right there. So we kind of broke through it, retested it, and now we're kind of bouncing off of it. All right, like I said, there is no change here. There is no change in structure since we had that higher low. This is the change in structure right here. So this started the uptrend. We didn't know if it was confirmed just yet. This further confirmed it, putting in a higher low. And then the break of this high further confirmed it again, which basically locked it in. Once that high was taken out, it was locked in. And now we're very obviously in an uptrend. So started here on that strong candle, that pivot candle. Basically A, this would be B. And then C would be like the break of this, that high right there. You have that like three cluster confirmation. And that's exactly how I'm reading the 1 minute. Like, you guys are always constantly looking at these candles and staring too much at the individual candles. I do not give a shit about these candles. 90% of the time, I do not care. Now, the candles I do care about are candles like this, like very obvious candles. Candles that are very aggressive, candles that have very strong wicks, candles that are retesting very important levels. But like all these candles in between, I do not care. These could be doing anything, does not mean anything to me. All right, getting some sell pressure at 91 here. A little cluster of sellers coming in. Kind of being absorbed at 92. So seeing something like that, where you see that block of sellers come in on the tape, you see that absorption on the 30-minute, you're starting to get a little bit of a warning sign of like, okay, they might be stalling out here. Doesn't mean I'm like pressing the sell button, but it means I'm paying attention a little bit more. Yeah, you see how much red you're getting here? 91, 90. Little bit of absorption on 92. You see how much stronger the trend is after that higher low? After they had that confirmation? Like, look at how much better the trend gets after this low right here, and then even after the high break, too. So once you started breaking that high, it got even better, because the buyers feel so much safer buying that move. Like, if you're buying here, this is aggressive. Doesn't mean you're wrong. You can buy those pivots and very clearly make money. It just means you're aggressive. You're not really waiting on confirmation. Then you have the safer traders on the pullback, safer traders on the confirmation there as well, right? Okay, look at the block of sellers. More sellers at 89, more sellers at 88. A lot of sellers up here. A little bit of a sweep on that 5-minute as well. What they could be doing is we're very close to that 30-minute close. They could be repairing this down to 85, so watch out for that 30-minute repair. If they do not repair that, you will have single prints going down to 85. If you guys are enjoying the stream, hit that like button. Be sure to subscribe. Appreciate you guys hanging out. Today's a bit more exciting than the past few days. Very clean delta flip today. If you look at the candles here, they're colored based on delta. It's an indicator on Addis called delta colored candles. I have it set to 3 and 300. You can see it flip from red to green basically when price flipped, so very good delta. Yeah, this is the price action we needed for Momo Monday. You're not wrong. Right now, we basically just have the Momos confirming the bottom. They all had their purple shadings confirming the lows. What happened to that pivot? I swear there was a pivot there. Oh, the pivot was at 9:30. That's right. So we had a pivot on NASDAQ and then it broke down. Five-minute pivot on NASDAQ on the bottom, 15 as well, and putting in a 30. So now it's lagging behind ES. Also putting in a 1 hour. So doing the same thing that ES is doing, just lagging behind. Five-minute trail flipping. Can't tell if the 1 hour trail is still green. I believe it is. It is, yeah. All right, pay attention here. We have a lot of absorption. So we are seeing that sell pressure. Like I said, if it wants to top out that short-term trend, it's going to be around here, right? Around 90. And that's very clearly what they're trying to do. Notice how much more action is coming in at 90 to 92 than we saw below it. You had that very strong sell pressure trying to push down. You have the very strong absorption going on. It just confirms that we're looking at the right levels. Little top doji on the 5-minute confirming the battle here. Dojis are battle candles. Think about a D-shaped bell curve. That's pretty much every single doji. Almost every doji is going to be a bell curve. Now, sometimes the dojis are imbalanced, like this doji is top-heavy. Now, having a top-heavy doji on the high is not good. It's not good for the buyers because that means they're being absorbed. Which we already knew that because we could see that on the 30-minute. We can see that on the 30-minute, right? But if you think about every doji as a bell curve, as a D-shaped balance, that's pretty much what they want to be. A perfect doji will be a D-shaped bell curve. But then you have the imbalance if there is absorption, right? Let's go back to that doji at 940. That's a beautiful doji there. Yep, so that one's pretty much a bell curve. You see how the highest node, the POC, is right in the middle? And then it falls off. There's not really any clear absorption. It's a little bit imbalanced because it goes down a bit more, but not much. That's pretty much a perfect bell curve. $15-minute not looking too good. Still showing that absorption. I have both, Joe. They're just separated. Well, actually, I don't have both. I deleted the old one. So I'm using just the new one on ES. I am using both on NASDAQ because they're different levels. So these ones are still above us on NQ. But on ES, we've already retraced. Now you could do that, but I wouldn't advise it. Like you could grab this whole thing. If TradingView even wants to load, that'd be nice. So if we take the whole thing, you can see that POC node is massive. So right around like 70 to 80. If they want this to be a higher time frame break, they need to protect that 80. They need to hold above 90. So responsive buyers need to protect 80. Aggressive buyers need to buy above 90. There's the single prints going down to 85. There has been no shift in structure. So if you're holding longs, there's nothing threatening you. Like I said earlier, you had that little bit of a warning. It's kind of turning your brain on. You're paying attention, right? It doesn't mean you're pressing the sell button. It just means like, okay, let's actually see what's going on here. You have that absorption and you have that cluster of sellers. Those are the only things threatening you here. Also, single prints. Those are now threatening you as well. So you want to break out here pretty soon, or you're starting to feel a bit uncomfortable in this trade. If you're in a long, I mean. Because the problems are starting to stack up. We have a top doji, we have absorption, we have cell cluster, we have single prints. We don't really have a reason to sell just yet. Unless it's the absorption trade. I guess you could trade that as a trade. But you don't have like a clear market structure shift. You don't have like a super strong reason to press that button just yet. If you're making an argument for a short here, I think the best argument is the absorption. So as long as this is being absorbed, the short is okay. But as soon as that breaks, it's not really okay anymore. Going from a strong uptrend into a vertical distribution here. Being more responsive. They're allowing those responsive buyers to catch up. Is that your first message in chat, Midget? That's a wild first message if it is. I think I've seen you once or twice before, I'm not sure. What I mean by vertical distribution, type that in on my shorts and YouTube, and there's like a million videos on it. Vertical distribution is when you lose all your shorts, pretty much, yeah. That's a good way to say it. Okay, another warning sign here, turning into a sweep on the 15 minute and a sweep on the 30. Delta coming down pretty aggressively, another warning sign. So right now we are rotating this. Like I said, dojis are D shapes, right? So we're rotating this node. So watch any failures to rotate. If they start to fail to rotate to the upside, that means the buyers are done. So right now that node is 91. It's allowing about 1.5 to 2 points above. It's allowing about 2 points below. This is that key macro level too, the 90 level. Very strong liquidity on the buy side here. Those responsive buyers are holding you up here. Buyers coming in on NASDAQ, possibly pushing buyers up on ES. We'll see if they come in on ES. Doesn't look like they're pushing ES. It seems like ES is mostly leading today. They are constantly failing to rotate here. They're not allowing it to go back to that 92 or 93. That is definitely not a good sign for buyers. If they do not get it back, if they do not get back above that 91 node very soon, they're going to start pushing this back down into that single print. These large dojis, like on the 15-minute, 30-minute, higher time frames, right? They are a great example of what I'm talking about when I say I don't give a shit what these candles are doing on the 1 minute. You especially do not give a shit if it's on a 30-minute doji like this. You're more so just reading the back and forth waves of price. You have our node here, and then you're just kind of like rotate, 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 rotate. But you see what it's doing? So if you think about this as a D-shaped profile, like on a daily, how do you trade this on a daily? You buy the value low, you sell the value high, and then if it hits the POC, hits VWAP, and it completely fails, that's a big problem. Look at that sell block. A lot of clusters, or a lot of sellers coming in at 90, 50, 90, 75, 90 quarter. But yeah, what I was saying was if it hits the POC or VWAP and then fails, that's a pretty big red flag, right? That's kind of what's happening here. It's trying to rotate, but it keeps doing this, where it goes up, comes down, goes up, comes down, goes up, comes down, right? You're not getting to this upper cluster, which is putting in now a rollover top, because now you're putting in a lower high here. So now our structure is shifting to the downside. So there's our last cluster was a really big sell cluster at all these sellers right here. 90 and a half, basically 90. So they need to protect that 90 level now. There's the drop, so there's the single print coming in. Single prints have been filled, so that reason to go down has been repaired. So now we're doing the exact same thing we were doing on the way up. Now we're just doing it on the way down, right? We're watching that structure. We put in a lower high and a lower low locally. So now we need to maintain those. You want to keep putting in lower highs, keep putting in lower lows. You need to respect that 90 cluster on any rebound, because that's where that last push came in. So that right there was a great example of basically everything we talked about today, right? The warnings coming in, but the warnings are not exactly a reason to press the button. And then it gets to a point where it's like, okay, now everything's stacking up in my favor. We first had the warning of the absorption. We had the warning of the seller cluster. We had the warning of the sweep. We had the warning of the failure to rotate. We had the warning of the lower high. Then it finally gave it to you, and it finally dropped. You also had the warning of the single prints, right? I was glued to this chart, so I didn't see it, but you also had a bear div there. So you had a bear div on the Momo as well. So here's a bear div on that rollover top. Momo going down. Now we're flipping our trail red on the 1 minute, so keep an eye on that. Let's make sure it doesn't quickly trap and then reflip. $30-minute topped out on that fair price, that wick sniper there. Do the exact tick. Nasty 15-minute doji, putting in a pivot. And there's that macro level, that 90 level. Got above it a little bit. It got above it by about 3 points. But those macro sellers are coming in. They don't want to see this short-term uptrend continue. Okay, so going back to the single prints, we don't know just yet if this was just a single print fill-in. As of right now, we're not finding any sell pressure at the bottom of those single prints, so we could just be filling this in and then bouncing. We need to see more sell pressure at the bottom of the single prints around 86 to 87, or it's going to just bounce right back. Okay, the rebound into this 90 node is very important. If they just quickly trade right back above 90, they basically act like there's no sellers there, then this was just a single print fill-in. We want to keep establishing lower highs, or this just turns into a little trap. Okay, so we're not seeing those seller clusters come in on the tape on that 90 node. So they still look like that was just a single print fill-in, and they are now shifting the POC to the high here. So this node that we were looking at earlier has gotten so strong that the POC is now here. It's basically become the POC. Now, I wouldn't say this rollover is completely dead yet. You still want to see how the sellers come in on this rotation. If they do not come in on basically what you would say is the value high of this candle, which is somewhere around like 92, if they don't come in there, then it's dead. Then it's completely dead. So instead of seeing this turn into a very large rollover top trade where it retraces the entire day, it hits VWAP, it hits the prior low, it just turned into a single print fill-in so far. Gave you more of a scalp. How many points was that? That was about... Was it like 5 points? Yeah, it was like 4 or 5 points, depending on where you entered. I would also say that if it doesn't top here, the likelihood of this turning into a pretty choppy vertical distribution is very high. Because that was pretty much perfect. Almost every single thing was lining up for a good sell there. And then you immediately bought it. So if that's not the sell, it's going to be difficult. It's going to be a vertical chop, most likely. And that's the second time today that a good sell has failed. The bear flag into VWAP also failed. So that one gave you, let me see here. If you entered right on VWAP, it gave you about 4 or 5 points. If you entered on the sweep, the maximum was about 8 points. So it looks like the sellers are getting their scalps. They're not getting any large moves. This is confirming the macro trend shift, putting in a higher low on the higher time frame. You are not seeing those sellers at 92 here, so that rotation is possibly failing here. If you're selling into single prints, basically what just happened is the worst thing you want to see, right? The last thing you want to see, I should say. You do not want to see this like LVN going into the single prints. It means that they're rejecting that price, right? If they're not building up some type of cluster either inside the single prints or at the bottom of the single prints, it's turning into that rejection. That's what an LVN is, and that's what a single print is. It's a price rejection. The price does not like that level enough to stay there. What are you typically looking for, Nikki? Yeah, Mauricio, that's what I was saying about Delta. I think it was yesterday we were talking about it. It's not very trustworthy right now into all-time highs. It doesn't trade the same around all-time highs. It also doesn't trade the same around September into like the big expirations. So what we're seeing right now is a failure to rotate to the bottom of this doji. They are protecting the upper portion. They're protecting the POC. They are trying to continue this uptrend by basically shifting the POC up and then bouncing off of it, using it as a launch pad. So this move down at this point was just a single print fill in. You did not find any value on that single print to the downside or basically at all. So you rejected those single prints. And this low right here is a higher low on a higher time frame, right? You're basically confirming this trend on a higher time frame. Still seeing some weakness up here. You're definitely seeing the bearish delta. You're seeing a little bit of absorption, but you're not looking great as a seller. Like the sellers are still struggling. Yeah, I talked about the delta a lot in a couple of tutoring sessions this last week or so, and I was talking about how it used to be like at the top of my list on things that I like to check before I press the button, before I press buy or sell, right? It's not really at the top of the list anymore. It's probably one of the last things I'm checking. As far as cumulative delta, let me clarify that. The cumulative delta is what I'm talking about. The delta, bar by bar, candle by candle, still very high on my list. But the cumulative delta, it has lost its power by quite a bit. Last year, year before that, even like going back many years, very high on my list. It just feels like it's kind of lost a little bit of its edge. Probably too many people are using it, maybe, I don't know. It definitely has edge decay. I got you, Nikki. So you're looking for more of like the explosive moves that kind of get retested, kind of like these big candles here, like the big candles that kind of get their retest. So when you don't have enough of those big candles, you're not really seeing a lot of trades. Yes, we do have a poor high. Yep. So now we're kind of seeing a rollover top on NASDAQ. It's kind of more of a rollover distribution, like it's a much longer rollover. Sellers possibly getting a second attempt here. The aggressive buyers are very weak on the high. Want to Chuck? It happens when Delta is very heavily against price. It's because of the limit orders pushing the market around instead of the market orders pushing the price around, which you just saw right there. The block trades coming in, possibly an announcement or something. I'm not sure what's causing this spike in volatility here. I'm assuming there's a Trump tweet or an announcement or something. Yeah, if you think about what's happening, like a Delta is nuking all day, what does that mean? It means that there are a shit ton of limit buyers. Because for there to be a bunch of bearish Delta, there has to be a bunch of limit buyers because they're the opposing side of that trade. So if the Delta is constantly nuking all day, but the price is still going up, that's because the limit buyers are not allowing the price to go down. Typically, that means there is a very large trader or traders, hedges, hedge funds, I mean, accumulating positions. Delta is just the difference in market buying and market selling. Which, like I said, the other side of that is the limit side. So if you think about Delta, it's not like this simple, but if you like flip the number, I guess you would say. Let me just stop there. I'll probably just confuse you further. The point I was going to make is not very clear. It's basically just think about the limit traders are on the opposing side. So like right now, you can see it. You can see it on the tape actually when it goes down. I said it earlier. I said like there's a massive buyer protecting that price. A lot of liquidity on the buy side. So when price is going down here, you keep seeing the liquidity on the buy side, on the bid. It keeps getting larger and larger. It's because we're seeing exactly what you said. There's a lot of sellers coming in, but it doesn't matter because there is a big buyer just accumulating, which in turn does what we said earlier. I said if that sell did not work, the likelihood of it turning into a vertical distribution is very high, which that's basically what a vertical distribution is. It's when a limit buyer or a group of limit buyers is constantly pushing the price up, even though there's a lot of sell pressure. Think about why the vertical distribution is pulling back into the 24 EMA, because that's where the responsive buyers are. So every time it continuously pulls back, you run into a bunch of bids, the bids hold you up, you rinse and repeat. Yeah, hopefully the NVIDIA employees are still rich after today. They've got earnings coming out. I love how one of NVIDIA's only problems is the fact that their employees all got ridiculously rich and they don't want to work anymore. Could you imagine? That's pretty funny. That was one of those companies you wanted to be in early for sure. So if we do turn into a vertical distribution for the entire day and it just keeps doing this, just be careful on shorts. You've had two really good shorts today that only gave you like half of what they should have given you. You had the rollover top, gave you the single prints, and did not give you VWAP. You had the bear flag and the VWAP, gave you a little bit of a pullback about halfway to your target, did not make the target. So the sells, even though they are a pretty high strike rate, are only getting about half their TPs. The delta is it's perfectly in that vertical distribution format where it's just slowly bleeding out, but price doesn't care because there is a massive limit buyer that just keeps holding it up. So just be careful on those shorts if this continues. I'd say like this candle is probably, what do we have, 15 minutes left? Probably by 12 o'clock, you want to break this pattern, or it's going to be very difficult to break because the volume gets very, very low. Yesterday and Monday, the volume is just tanking in the afternoon. We have that summer effect. You're starting to really see that vertical distribution effect here where you have a lot of bearish delta, but it's just not doing anything. And by the way, the higher time frame structure is still very clearly bullish. We had a higher high, higher low, higher high. That's a one candle higher low, but you could consider that a higher low as well, just of how strong it bounced out of that. And now we're putting in another higher high. So trend is still continuing to the upside. Now you can see the difference in the delta candles here. Since that rollover top, our delta has been very red. So we are getting that vertical distribution, that vertical trap kind of. Coming up on last week's high, if it does continue, keep an eye on like 95 to 96. James, it's not a setting, it's an indicator. It's called delta colored candles. Our volume is already falling off a cliff. We started the day. Where's our 9:30 candle? Here it is. 106, 75, 53, 30. Still have 10 minutes left, so we'll probably close around like 40,000 if I had to guess. I just showed the indicator on delta candles. You mean these ones? These ones I have a couple of things I'll show very briefly. Cluster search. What else do I have? Color bar. Everything else doesn't really matter. That's all just little things. Then I have, these are my default settings. And this is pretty much a textbook vertical distribution. So at this point, you're just watching the trails, you're watching the 24 EMA. You don't really care about the 8 EMA because vertical chops are usually testing the 24, which we can see here. Tested there, tested there, tested there. You're just keeping an eye on the trails, 24s, and as they push up, there's no change in structure. We start to lose those EMAs and trails, then it starts to be a time to pay attention. Hopefully it doesn't do this the rest of the day, but it wouldn't shock me. The volume is quite low in the afternoon. This is the pain of these vertical distributions where it gives you these like enticing uh these clusters of sellers, right? Very strong sellers. And they just keep failing over and over and over again. And you have to ask yourself like, okay, is this going to be the time that it doesn't fail? And there's no easy answer to that, right? There's no really easy way to say that this time it is different. It obviously depends on how much confluence it, like everything lining up together and all that stuff, but these patterns are very painful for that reason. There's just no easy way to tell. Good morning, Nitro. Have a good day, Joe. We're also getting the TPO version of a vertical distribution where you build up a pretty strong node on the top, puts in a poor high, bounces off the node, repairs the poor high, do the whole process over again. And it just does that again and again and again until the vertical chop finally comes to an end. The delta is bleeding out here. Now, normally what I say, and like I said, the cumulative delta is not really at the top of my list anymore. So take this with a grain of salt. But normally what I say is when the cumulative delta is trending very aggressively in one direction and price is trending very aggressively in another direction, the delta trend typically wins. Now, that's less and less true recently because of the delta just becoming weaker. But that has been the case for a while. Where eventually, before the end of the day, the delta trend does win. So, like, if it does this the entire day and we're going into like 3 o'clock, I would heavily think that the closing spike would be to the downside. Hey, Mark, have a good day, man. We'll see you tomorrow. Don't forget, guys, we have NVIDIA earnings after the bell today, the closing bell. Then we have really big data tomorrow morning and Friday. That's why the market is being so low volume and choppy. They're just waiting on all that data. Yeah, exactly. It's like a single print. It's like single prints and gaps. You pretty much know they're going to get filled in, but timing it is the problem. And that's the same thing with this delta trend situation. You pretty much know the delta trend to the downside is going to win eventually, but timing it is a pain in the ass. You don't know which top is the proper top. That delta is starting to ramp up here. You're starting to see more and more aggressive sells below that 24, possibly putting in a lower high here, losing the 24, losing the trail flipping red. So now that we have that new low on the 30-minute, we need to see those failures to rotate back up, right? We don't want to see that price reclaiming those upper nodes around like 92.50, 93, that sort of thing. The all-time high, I have 508. 508.75. You have lost the high on the ES 1 minute. Let's see the 5 minute. 5 minute has a bear div. 15 minutes still pinching. 30 minutes still pinching. Yeah, really sloppy price action here. And this is because the higher time frame traders and the short time frame traders are battling here. You probably have some higher time frame sellers trying to protect this P shape here, this overlapping value. All right, guys, that was the last attempt I was going to give it to commentate this. You guys know I absolutely hate commentating vertical distributions. So that was the last attempt. We were going to allow it to, I was going to continue the stream if it continued to go down, but now we're just going to keep chopping for the most part. So we're going to call it a stream there. I will be streaming in the Discord for the rest of the day. Just be on the lookout for this vertical distribution. It is very dangerous for the kind of for everybody, honestly. It's not the best pattern to long either, but it's definitely dangerous for the sellers. So be careful. The pattern with the vertical chop is you really want to watch those trails. You really want to watch those 24 EMAs. If it's way too choppy on the 1 minute 24, which it kind of is, you might want to go to the 5 minute. And here we go. They heard I was closing stream, and now they have some bearish blocks coming in. You might want to go to the 5 minutes. All right, guys, one sec. You can't make this shit up. I said I was closing stream, and now we're getting some block trades and some action. All right, now this is actually the last move I'm going to give it. If it bounces this time, we're gonna call it. What I was saying was if the 24 EMA is not being respected on the vertical distribution, which it kind of isn't in this case, you want to go to a 5 minute and watch that 24 EMA on the 5 minute. Same thing with the trails. If the trail just keeps flipping back and forth on the 1 minute, just watch that 5 minute trail. The choppier the vertical distribution gets, the higher the time frame you want to go to, basically. We did tap VWAP there on NASDAQ. You didn't get to VWAP on ES. You missed it by a point or two. All right, it's slowing down again. We're gonna call it. We're gonna call it here. I'll be streaming in Discord, like I said. If you guys are not in Discord, just be sure to subscribe, hit that bell, and you'll know when I go live tomorrow. Typically go live right around the open, 10-15 minutes before the open sometimes. So watch out for that. But yeah, that's all I got. If you guys want to get entered in that Apex raffle, we're going to be doing some giveaways for some Apex accounts. If you guys bought any 250K accounts based on our sizing video, we put out that 250K sizing video. I think it was last week, maybe 2 weeks ago. Be sure to check that video out. Like I said, if you bought any accounts using that code, just send them to my email. I will get you guys added to the raffle. I'll be doing that raffle later this week. Here is my email if you need it. And also, if you bought any accounts, the 250Ks, we're doing rebates for the tutoring and the Discord. So just send me those receipts if you guys are looking to join the tutoring or the Discord. And I'm rebating up to $100 for the tutoring and the Discord. I think that's basically one account. So if you buy one 250K account with the 80%, I think it's like $95. So you basically get a free account if you're looking to join the Discord. But all right, guys, I appreciate you being here. I'll see you tomorrow. Be very careful today. It's probably going to be very boring. They're waiting on the NVIDIA earnings. Don't forget about those earnings if you guys are holding anything overnight. Very, very big earnings. I think it's going to be around pretty much right after the close, so like 4:15 to 4:30. So be very, very careful. I think the implied move right now is like 6 to 8% on NVIDIA. So that could move around NASDAQ by, I'd say, probably maybe 0.5%, maybe 1% if it's crazy. We'll see. But all right, guys, that's it. I'll see you tomorrow. Peace.